They said he was crazy, a man with no money, no team, no connections, just a scribbled notebook full of wild ideas and a glint in his eye that people either found inspiring or unsettling. In a small, crumbling apartment with cracked walls and a broken heater, he sat at a makeshift desk made from an old door propped on milk crates. Winter seeped in through the windows like a ghost. The radiator hadn't worked in weeks. His fingers were numb, but he kept writing. Every morning, he woke up to the same three things: an empty wallet, a dream that wouldn't leave him alone, and a decision to keep going. His name was Elijah Hart. At 29, he had dropped out of architecture school with just 3 semesters left, not because he couldn't finish, but because something inside him whispered meant to build more than buildings. He didn't know what that meant at first. All he knew was that he had this vision for a company that didn't exist yet. One that would redesign how people experience urban space, not just buildings, entire neighborhoods. Interactive, walkable, green, sustainable. A blend of nature, art, and functionality. A city where you didn't just live, you felt alive. But no one cared about vision when you had no money. Investors wouldn't return his calls. Banks laughed him out the door. He didn't even own a suit for meetings. The only thing he had was his sketchbook, a public library Wi-Fi connection, and the sheer force of belief. At night, he'd take temp jobs, dishwasher, janitor, anything that gave him enough to eat dollar menu meals and keep the lights on. Every spare second, he poured into the project. He taught himself design software on YouTube, drafted proposals on donated software licenses, and learned how to pitch by watching tech founders talk on stage and mimicking them in front of a cracked mirror. One afternoon, he walked into a city planning forum, underfed and overprepared. He wasn't on the guest list. But he watched, took notes, and when the panel ended, he approached one of the speakers, a retired architect named Claudia Marsh, known for championing sustainable design in her prime. He asked if he could show her something. She glanced at her watch, sighed, and said, "You've got 2 minutes." He pulled out his sketchbook, the same one that had coffee stains and weathered pages from being carried everywhere. As he flipped through it, her eyes shifted. What started as polite disinterest turned into genuine curiosity. And then, silence. When he finished, she looked at him and said, This shouldn't be in a sketchbook. It should be built." Claudia introduced him to an old colleague at an incubator program. It wasn't glamorous, just a shared workspace in the back of a warehouse, but it had heat, Wi-Fi, and a mentor. That was all Elijah needed. Still broke, he slept on a donated futon in the corner of the office. He ate instant noodles, wore the same clothes on rotation, and walked miles to meetings he couldn't afford cabs to. But the work began to speak louder than his bank account. He built a small prototype model using recycled materials and shot a makeshift video pitch with his phone. He uploaded it to a crowdfunding platform with the title, "I have no money, just vision." It didn't go viral, not at first. But someone shared it, then another. Then a small blog picked it up, and then a bigger one. Within a week, it had 12,000 shares and over 400 backers. Not $1 million, but enough to build a better prototype and take his idea to the next level. Still, it wasn't easy. There were nights when he questioned everything. Nights he almost quit. But one story kept him going, his mother's. She'd grown up poor, too. a seamstress who stitched clothes for rich families while wearing handmade. She always said, "You don't need money to make something beautiful, just thread and vision." She passed away the year he dropped out of school, never got to see what he built. 5 years later, a section of the city bore his mark, a public square, 3 eco-friendly buildings, an art installation, and a nameplate that read, "Vision by Elijah Hart." People walked there every day without knowing the sleepless nights, the rejections, the Ramon-fueled brainstorming, or the guy who once stood on a corner in the rain handing out pamphlets. A journalist once asked him what he would have done if the crowdfunding hadn't worked. If Claudia hadn't stopped to look at his sketchbook, if the money had never come. He paused, then smiled. "I would have kept going." That's the thing about vision, it doesn't wait for permission. His story became a case study at universities. The guy who started with no money and just a vision. And when people asked what his secret was, he'd say, "Don't look for the door. Build your own entrance." Because sometimes that's all we have. Not the connections, not the comfort, not even the certainty, just a fire inside that refuses to be put out. No money, just vision. And sometimes that's enough to change the world.